Bilinguals of Reddit, what's your they didn't know I spoke their language story? I look mixed. I'm full Cambodian, but I've been confused with being mixed with black. When I was 7 I went with my mom to her doctor in Long Beach, which is mainly Cambodian populated in that area. My mom went inside her doctor's office, leaving me in the waiting room. As soon as the office door closed, these two old Cambodian ladies start talking shit in Khmer, saying how she's a single mom, she's not, and how she had a black baby, me, and that's such a shame BC she made my life miserable. They also said my skin color was ugly and I had a black nose, etc. I just sat quietly, looking at them until one realized, oh snap, maybe she understands Khmer, and asks me, hey, do you know your dad? And I just replied back in our language, yeah, and he's at home waiting for us. And we have the same skin color, so that means yours is ugly too. Both of their faces dropped. It was great, and they had the audacity to tell my mom that I was rude when she came out. It's a reverse of this actually. I didn't know they spoke my language. I asked my mom in Vietnamese if I could have the Mexican ice cream near checkout. That sheet is the best thing ever, and was begging her since she thought I had too many sweets. This older white man turns around and says it's pretty good ice cream in our language. Me and my mom blankly stared at him in awe. It was the first time I've ever heard a white man speak Vietnamese. It wasn't flawless, but I could understand him. It was actually pretty freaking great. He noticed our faces and was just like, yeah, my wife's family does the same. I worked as a part-time clothing model for a while in an Arab country. I am Arab, but I don't look like it apparently. Anyways, we had to walk around this convention and show the clothes, wearing heels on a carpet floor. I was young, around 16. I didn't know how to walk really well in heels yet, and the carpet floors didn't help either. The women there didn't know I spoke Arabic and started making fun of how I'm walking. I went up to them and asked them where the bathroom was in Arabic. They looked so surprised and embarrassed at the same time. It was lovely. Sometimes not being aggressive is the best comeback. I'm fairly tattooed and I was working in retail, in a shoe shop. I was serving a very rude woman and her daughter, both of whom clearly thought they were better than me. And every time they asked for shoes they told me, in English, that I was very slow to fetch them and bad at my job. I was only on like my 3rd shift. The atmosphere turned pretty sour because obviously they were being rude and it annoyed me. And as I was boxing up the shoes they wanted, the mother turned and said to her daughter something like, don't ever get tattoos. This is the kind of person that has them. Working in retail with absolutely no brains, and tattoos reflect that. Blah 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 in Italian. I simply replied, non sono d'accordo. Ma grazie, I disagree. But thank you. She looked absolutely humiliated and quickly left. I used to work as a dealer in a casino where our biggest richest clients were Chinese. I don't look Chinese, but I could understand and speak it. Sitting down on my table, they thought it was safe to discuss techniques to be sneaky behind my back, and also talk about me a little. I'm a young girl, so I got some creepy remarks. They never understood how they never got away with things, as I never made any indication I understood them. Visiting South Korea with my wife, a native of that country. I'm shaped like a lumberjack, and have a big, red lumberjack beard to match. A group of Korean women in their 50s and 60s nearby were laughing and calling me a bear, which I found hilarious. So one of the older ones says, "Gop, bear," to me as she passes by. And I start laughing. She makes that face like, did he understand what just I said? So I raise my arms and make a playful growl at her. She is horrified and starts apologizing while her friends all cover their mouths and giggle, as Korean women customarily do. I love Korea. Late to the party, but once when I was younger I went to the park with my sister. We looked very white and no one would know both of us to speak Mandarin fluently unless we told them. Some money must have fallen out of my sister's pocket, and in Mandarin we hear a mother talking to her daughter and telling her not to let us know we dropped money so that they could pick it up after we left. Both of us turned around straight away and my sister picked up her money while both of us gave them dirty looks and we changed our conversation to Mandarin. The look of horror on both of their faces will forever be burned into my head. I was playing chess with some guy and he was talking to a friend. My opponent starts talking to his French in French, which I can understand. He was saying stuff like my opponent sucks. I'm gonna easily beat him. It was pretty amusing watching him criticize me and then I still beat him. He was pretty bad but so was I back then. I told him I understand French after I beat him. So I was living in Barcelona dating a Swedish girl about 10 years ago. And I got really into studying Swedish and watching Swedish films and learning vocabulary and stuff. So we went on vacation to Portugal with her roommate over the summer. And we're on the beach. I'm listening to a conversation that they're having between themselves. And honestly not understanding much of it. But then, in this moment of pure clarity, I heard my girlfriend say, "Sometimes I look at him and I just think, why? Oh man." I confronted her about it. And I've never seen someone turn so red in my life. Teacher here. Had a student with serious issues concerning authority. Essentially, he would cuss out nearly anyone who tried to tell him what to do with every name in the book. One day, he thought he'd get creative and starting swearing in Spanish to avoid consequences and called me basically the equivalent of wrinkly ballsack. Long story short, I would pay to have a picture of his face when I replied, in fluent Spanish, that he was going to call his mother and repeat what he had just said. I went on a short trip to Salzburg, Austria. I'm from Hungary, this winter. Shortly before Christmas, I was walking through a crowded area in the Christmas market, everyone speaking in German, when I heard the guy right next to me yell "Who put their hands in my ass?" in Hungarian quite loudly. I started to laugh as loud as I can and the guy's face was all red. He was so embarrassed. Had this old fat lady come into my store a week ago. I work at a 7-Eleven. Now she has 2 small kids and is talking to them in Spanish. She says hi to me in English. As I'm ringing her up she tells her kids in Spanish, "Remember to always stay out of the sun, or else you're going to end up dark as her." Now I don't care who the bitch thinks she is, but I said in Spanish, "At least there isn't earthquake whenever I walk." She was pissed and walked out without paying. I have 2 German girls in my class and they usually talk German to each other. I figured out that one of them understood Dutch, since one of them laughed after I told a joke to another Dutchman, but they didn't figure out that I could understand German. I heard them gossip all the time about people in our year. In the beginning of this year I got assigned to a group with them and they were talking about a teaching being a dumbass, so I joined in. They were shocked at first but we had a good laugh afterwards. We're good friends now. This happened in HS. My homeroom teacher sent me to the principal's office with some paperwork that was requested. As I walk in I see this one guy in the principal's office. Tall black dude. We'll call him Mr. J, and he is speaking fluent Spanish with a Spanish teacher. I drop off the papers with the secretary and go back to class. It's almost end of day and I'm in my English class and we have a substitute teacher, MR. Capital J. Well, kids being kids, no one is listening to him. And one of my classmates, Millie, who's sitting on the other side of the room from me, starts bad-mouthing him in Spanish to 3 other girls. I kept telling her to shut up, but she wouldn't listen and just went on and on. He heard me try to warn her and motioned for me to stop. So I stopped. And that's when he began talking back to her in Spanish. I didn't say a thing. And the whole class died laughing. Millie then began to yell at me for not warning her and Mr. J told her, "She tried to warn you but you didn't listen." She and the other girls got detention for about a week. Cop here. I'm a white dude who speaks fluent Spanish. People talk openly in front of me about hiding drugs, having weapons, illegal things they did, etc. There's no chance I speak Spanish because I'm white. Apparently. Edit, United States. Not trying to be intrusive. But have you actually arrested anyone because of that? Yes. One even planned out attacking me right in front of me. It's so strange how people make assumptions about people simply because of their race. I have a healthy respect for minorities who have to deal with that in much worse ways than me. I'm an American and English-German bilingual. My high school hosted some exchange students from Austria. My family hosted a student. We were the only German-speaking host family. None of the exchange students except the one living at my house knew I know German. Americans are notoriously bad at foreign language. So the Austrians assumed I was monolingual. Anyway, I was hanging out with some of the exchange students and other hosts. And one of the Austrian kids told a joke to the other Austrians in German. I laughed. He asked, "Why are you laughing?" "You're just laughing because we're laughing," my exchange student said. "No. She knows German." Ja. Ich verstehe alles, I confirmed. Oh shit. Now we can't trash talk the Americans anymore. White dude here that you would never guess spoke Mandarin. Chinese people talk a lot of shit because they think no one understands them. Lol. As a Chinese person who lives in Canada, I would never speak crap about people in Chinese. So many white people speak better Mandarin than I do. I'm a nanny. Been one for several years. Went for an interview with a family. The mom seemed to be impressed by my qualifications, but the dad was acting pretty hostile. Kept saying in French that he didn't think it was a good idea to hire a POC. Replied in French that I didn't want to work for a racist. POC? Person of color. Bunch of German teenage girls in Dublin. I'm not a native German speaker, but I've worked in Germany, so my German is pretty good. I was out with some friends and they were sitting behind us in the McDonald's. They were gossiping about the boys in their group and their plans to try and get to their rooms later that night. I'm guessing they were there on a school trip. One girl was rather descriptive in what she wanted to do to one of the boys. When we left, I turned to them and said, "Viel Spaß dabei, have fun with that." She literally crawled under the table. I live in the US. I'm first generation Romanian American. Born here to immigrant parents. Spoke Romanian at home, that sort of thing. Was out in public not too long ago and an older couple started making rude comments about my outward physical appearance. Specifically my tattoos and muscles. The look of fear when I turned around and responded to them was priceless. I'm as Puerto Rican as they come. But my skin tone isn't brown AF. I get asked by other Puerto Ricans Hispanics if I'm Latina or not, let's just put it that way. I work in a hospital and whenever someone asks me if I understand Spanish, I always tell them no. I've learned that giving people any hint at the fact that I can understand makes me the target for a rant or a rich fest. It's gotten to the point where I can tell based solely on how they ask me the question. I've heard a few things in my day. A few weeks ago I ran into a patient who was cursing out his nurses in Spanish. The reason was that they weren't giving him the information he needs about his health. They kept blowing him off. But it wasn't on purpose. They didn't have any updates at the time and he was being a real pain in the ass. He had to wait. He's not going to get the results of his tests in 10 minutes. So as I walk by I hear him say in a nice way to a nurse, "I can't stand you. You are so useless, it's sad." He said it in Spanish. I turned to him and said in English, "They aren't useless. You are just acting entitled." He got real quiet after that. I was in a hostel in NZ standing in the kitchen. When two German teens next to me had a wild discussion about what is going wrong in their relationship. Apparently they traveled together but were in some kind of "hey, we do somehow feel naughty when we see each other but it's also kinda awkward and we don't know what's going on between us at this point" situation. Dude had like a public meltdown and she was playing "let's pretend I'm super angry and I don't care what he says but actually I'm obviously shaken because this is all too much for me." Then he asked me to give him the salt and I faked a French accent "Sérieux Monday me. I also speak French," and gave him the salt as to not blow my cover. I'm a white guy who lived in Senegal for 11 years. As such I learned quite a bit of Wolof, the local language. 99% of white people here don't because they aren't there that long. Anyways, there were a few times that people were talking about me or to me in Wolof without knowing I understood them. Once there was a group of teens at the beach and one of them greeted me with a Wolof insult for white people, red ears. But he said it in a nice way. As if I wouldn't know he was insulting me. He kept talking to me in Wolof and I responded in French that I don't understand. While in actuality I understood very well. After a minute I had enough and said in Wolof. Okay, I'm going. I'll see you around. Black ears. His friends had a big laugh and I moved on. I wasn't the bilingual one. But my bilingual friend was really the star of the show. I am a straight guy and my bilingual friend is gay. We were in college for summer school 20 plus years ago and everyone taking classes stayed in the same old dormitory. It was a school with a lot of international students who had even greater representation in the summer because they typically didn't fly home for just 3 months. My friend had a computer. I didn't. So he told me I could go into his room anytime and use it if he didn't need it at the time. My friend was white. But had spent a number of his childhood years in Japan and spoke Japanese like a native. We were talking and walking down the hall toward his room and 2 Japanese exchange students began talking to one another in Japanese. Looking at us and snickering. My friend looks over and starts dressing them down in absolute perfect Japanese and they are horrifically embarrassed. They began profusely apologizing and hurriedly walking away. I turned to my buddy. What did they say? They were making some disparaging remarks about your sex life. So I told them they were wrong and not to be rude, he said. Then he quipped. They were making some disparaging remarks about my sex life. Too. But those were all true. We asked a guy where AutoZone is. He responded in Spanish he doesn't speak English. Which is weird cause we are very obviously Mexican. But whichever. So we asked him again in Spanish. He responds in English. Oh, it's just 2 blocks that way. Felt very strange about the whole thing.